This was my first game jam and I wanted to share this experience with you because it's kind of fun. So kick off your wheelies, grab your gamer fuel, and lean back in your DX Racer because it's time for... Hey, so first things first, this is not a video about drugs and alcohol. This is a video about a video game, which may or may not contain drugs and alcohol. It does. This was a game I made for LD46.
No, stop, you missed a deadline and the game hardly works.
Okay, sorry for misleading you. I meant to say this is a game I tried to make for LD46, but instead only got a semi-playable version done weeks after the deadline because, well,
I have standards and I'm not gonna let something as silly as a deadline get in my way of my artistic...
Just kidding, there are more compromises in this game than there are in that relationship you call perfectly healthy, but that makes you cry for nights on end, wishing that they better understood you, wishing they didn't prioritize other people that aren't nearly as loving or giving as you, wishing that maybe one day you'd wake up and get that phone call from them asking you to breakfast because they value their limited time on this planet and want to share it with you because damn it, they feel that love. One last thing, I don't partake in white gold, aka nose candy, aka yayo, aka coca loca, BMWKA, cocaine. I never have and never will, except the one time I rubbed my finger on the inside of an essentially empty baggie that had coke in it, and then touched a tiny part of my fingertip against a tiny part of my tongue and got that crazy buzzy feeling for like 10 minutes. I don't condone that kind of behavior. And now, to the post-mortem. The idea. The original idea for this game was something along the lines of this. As the player, you are tasked with running a nightclub, a discotheque, a disco in the 70s. You have to manage the line of people outside of the club, either letting them in or telling them to fuck off. Then when they're in the club, you gotta serve them drinks to get them drunk enough to hit the dance floor, because, you know, there isn't a single soul on this entire planet who is comfortable enough with themselves to move their limbs around to a rhythm designated by a song playing in a building built solely for that activity. No, the kind of self-esteem needed for that exists only in fairy tales. So, once you got all these people dancing on your dance floor, you gotta start giving them little lines of coke to keep them awake and to keep them dancing. It's like a game version of They Shoot Horses, don't they? Except instead of a dance contest, it's an illicit substance dependency because, let's face it, the only way to get kids to play your games is when there's hard drugs and sex and violence. So when the people get tired, you give them coke and it keeps them energized and they keep dancing. But be careful, because if they hork one too many rails, they overdose and pass out. This, by the way, is how many people overdose on cocaine in the United States every year, and this is how many of them die.
But thankfully, this is a video game, and in video games you have magical tools stolen from movies like Pulp Fiction, where Vincent slams an adrenaline shot into his OD'd date's chest. So that's what you do here too. Just reach into your pants and whip out your revival needle and use it on the passed out NPC. Voila! They are invariably and instantaneously revived and ready to go for another round of cocktails and a few more lines of coke before ODing again and again and again and so on and so forth. You don't start getting points until there are enough people on the dance floor and the climax of the song is cued, at which point you get points for every person who hits the dance floor and continue to get points for every bar of the song they continue to dance there. But if too many people leave the dance floor, the song goes back to a chiller part of the instrumentals, your high score gets recorded, and then your current score gets set back to 0. You lose everything, nobody loves you anymore. All of this stuff was written out in a text document that I would be coming back to for reference and altering throughout the process. Making a game in 2 days, like life, means constantly letting yourself down and abandoning hopes and aspirations so you can get to that bare minimum state of functional. So from the get-go, I knew the music would be absolutely central to this game. It's a game where you're at a disco, for Christ's sake, so obviously the best soundtrack would be an 8-bit rendition of Staying Alive, because that's like disco plus video games, get it? But I said, fuck all that noise, Jack. I know this Chinese guy who makes really good music, one Mr. Sonny Wong, to write the game's original soundtrack. I bought a plane ticket to London, where he was staying at the time. He picked me up from the airport in his yayo white 1967 Toyota GT2000. Man, that was a sweet vehicle. We went back to his flat and spent the whole day listening to disco records and doing every drug the Queen could get her royal fingers on. Sonny made the music in Ableton, and with the help of our friend Laszlo, found the tools necessary for the key ingredient in any disco hit, a killer string section. And with that, we had our soundtrack.
So everything in this game is modeled by hand from scratch, by myself. And racism doesn't exist, and women experience all the same benefits a man does in this world. And oh yeah, gender fluidity is a hoax. Oh, hang on, sorry, my bad, none of that is true. What I actually did was hit up TurboSquid and CG Trader to find the perfect neutral character model that I could later give a variety of characteristics through a randomized texture and accessory script, like different skin colors, clothes, hairstyles, jewelry, and stuff like that. I paid a small and fair price for the model, which allowed me to get onto the environment stuff. All the character animations were from Mixamo, which had a few tweaks in the Mixamo browser itself, and then some tweaking in the actual animation files once they were in the game. Sunny whipped up some icon graphics that would be displayed above the NPCs when they wanted something, as well as the graphic for that neon sign in front of the club. I spent way too much time researching famous discos in the 1970s, but fuck off, because research is fun and I enjoy knowing more about the world I live in and its history, because being cultured is a virtue, but also shit, would you look at this stuff? You can feel the drugs and sex passing through space-time and channeling out of this photograph directly into your veins. So once I had a good idea of how these madhouses looked, but also how dull they were once all the lights were on and people cleared out, I modeled out the club in Cinema 4D, textured it there using textures from textures.com, exported as an FBX, and imported into Unity. And I nailed it the first time and got right back to work. Just kidding, I went back and forth between Cinema 4D and Unity like 3 times to do shit like modeling the rest of the surrounding neighborhood, and adding in a car that would pass by, just to give the city a little bit more life and not be so barren and lifeless like some completely fictional world where people are locking themselves in their homes, afraid to get within 6 feet of each other lest they die of some kind of super virus an ill-prepared human race would be devastated by. Beep beep! Add in some headlights and voila, cars are on the road and the economy is booming. Animated a ton of lights and cranked up the pixel count because damn it, they're virtual lights and the only environment they're hurting by being on is a computational one, and I don't give a fuck because I'm in the 1% that can run whatever I want, and also I don't really think they made that much of an impact on performance. At least not as much as post-processing effects. Oh, bloom, bloom, baby. Bloom, yes, more bloom. I was gonna give this game a 0 out of 10 until I saw the video options menu that let me crank the bloom. Now it's a 420 out of 69 BAFTA-winning gold. A little bit of bloom, chromatic aberration, noise, depth of field, and color correction. All geared toward giving it a more vintage feel, like you're watching film from the 1970s. Sound effects. Enter Cameron Coombe. He was like, pfft, I guess I could make some amazing sound effects for your stupid little game, and I took that as a blessing and ran with it. We had a 20-minute phone call where I laid out the sounds I needed. Like the sound of snorting coke and the sound of a needle being driven into a chest with a sharp inhale of life-giving relief. And some wish list items. Then he hung up on me and a couple hours later sent me a full 8.5-inch package to insert deep into my assets. So you know how in real life, if you play music out of a speaker and stand in front of it, you can hear it with your ears, but then you go behind some walls and suddenly your ears can't see the speaker anymore, and then you can't hear the music anymore? Okay, so in Unity's default 3D sound setup, it doesn't give a fuck about your precious walls and just says, hey, you can hear me, I'm in your head no matter where you go. So you have to do all this special stuff to make it so walls and sound in the game work like walls and sound in real life, which I had zero time to do myself, so the game doesn't have that. I really love the Quake multi-kill one-shot audio clips and wanted to put something similar in this game, and when I say similar, I mean try to do exactly that voice and sound, but different words. Again, fun doing research, looking into the slang used during the 1970s, picked out my favorites, recorded myself saying the lines, and with a little bit of finesse in Audacity. Here are a couple of my favorites.
Far out, slamming, unreal, shagadelic.
The actual, programming? So even though this is the last one on the list, it actually started much earlier on while a bunch of other things were being put into place. Everything was programmed using Playmaker, a visual scripting plugin for Unity. This means there was no code written for the game by myself, but instead in the background by these components I put together. The absolute hardest bit of programming was without a doubt the system for NPCs getting into queue outside of the disco. You'd think getting people to get in line and moving forward one spot each time someone got let in would be simple. And you'd be right, but what kind of game developer would I be if I did things the easy way, or or even the right way. I am and forever will be a tier 6 member of the Overcomplicate the Shit Out of Things Club. At that point in my game dev life, I had only made one game in Unity, and had spent less than a month learning how to use Unity and Playmaker, so get off my fucking back, Dad. Put simply, I didn't know how to use arrays, didn't know Playmaker's built-in FSM arrays sucked compared to the ultra-powerful Array Maker for Playmaker. Yeah, that's a plugin for a plugin. So making this game was, in many ways, my crash course in arrays. Lesson learned, now can I go back to my room and play Beetle Adventure Racing with Ed? Thanks. Developing after the deadline. So me and a few of the other boys entering this game jam decided making the deadline was for squares and unoriginal hacks, and that we would miss the opportunity to share with the world, as well as missing the point of having a 72-hour window to begin with, and just keep on keeping on into the following weeks. What a nightmare that was. You know that usual negative self-talk and lack of self-esteem you have on a day-to-day basis? Well, when you miss a deadline for something that was supposed to be quick and fun but balloons into this whole fucking thing that you have to finish by yourself, well, that negative self-talk turns into a silent treatment and a lack of interest in anything other than finishing this goddamn thing, even though every time you look at it, you ask yourself, is this even fun? Who the fuck is gonna play this? Why did I choose to spend my time making something like this? Then those negative thoughts dwindle down to something more manageable. With a little bit of healthy perspective, you can look back at everything you learned and be like, yeah, I made something, and it mostly works. And let me tell you something, mostly works is light years better than unfinished. So in the final couple days of making the game, I decided it was playable enough with a tolerable probability of encountering bugs, and decided to implement that last little bit of flourish, the randomized hairstyles for the characters. Except this happened. So I said, fuck it, they're all bald, it's a creative decision, and I'm an artist, and you just don't get it. Time to ship.